I guess we'll officially start the meeting, subcommittee meeting at 3:19 it looks like. And the first item I'd like to do, I don't have an agenda up yet, but the first item, I think we should all look at the meeting minutes, which I reviewed already, and everybody take a look and see if you have any questions or comments. There we go.
Are you seeing the minutes?
Yeah. Can you make them a touch larger or not? Yeah, good. Okay. But then you have to scroll. Yeah, okay, great. Well, that's the agenda.
Oh, you're right. It's the agenda.
Which is good. We're going to need that too. But
We
then
are going to need that. I'm so sorry. I thought I had that up. Let me just a second.
While we're waiting on it, I'll move to that they are correct and that we should accept them, or whatever you're supposed to say.
Has anyone not had a chance to read them yet? Bruce?
I've read them.
Okay. I've read them and have no issues.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay.
Hey, Bruce, we can see you now.
Yeah. How's my hair?
Oh, man, you better comb it. Get that blow dryer out. Come on.
More important questions, how's your knee?
They couldn't do it. I got to do it next week.
Oh, you didn't get it done? Okay.
No, I had a wound on my stomach, and he said, "No, not going to do it."
Yeah,
Thanks.
they're funny about that.
Yeah. He was real. He said, "No." He said, "No way."
So are you going back to Mayo, Bruce?
Yeah, I'm going back next week. Hopefully, if my wound's healed.
You're getting it done at the Mayo Clinic?
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
I always forget. That's in Rochester?
Well, I go to Rochester. They got the main one's in Rochester. It's one in Florida and one in Arizona.
Huh. I've heard good things about them.
Yeah, they're good.
Okay, so we've had the meeting minutes up. I've had a motion from Sarah Lynn to approve them. Does anyone else have a comment, or does someone want to second it?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Bruce Blue.
If I might make a comment, please.
Yes.
The minutes state that I was sympathetic to, and I don't see them right in front of me, but right at the bottom it has that I made a comment that I was sympathetic to basically illegal dumping. And I don't think my comment was that I was sympathetic to it, but that based on the cost and the roadways, that I understood why some people would do it. But I'm very opposed to it, and I don't want anything to be worded to indicate that I'm somewhat supportive of illegal dumping.
Okay, I didn't catch that. Karen, could you put it back up for a second?
Yep, sorry about that. I had
Good point, Jerry.
shared. I think it was just a term Diane probably used to try to get the point across, but we can certainly edit that.
Mr. McGraw is sympathetic to illegal dumping, and I certainly don't want to give that impression.
Yeah, that does come out differently. Yeah. What would you like to change it to, Mr. McGraw? Is aware? Will you tell us what word?
I would say I am concerned that illegal dumping might occur due to the confusion and expense.
Okay, it's being changed as we speak.
Or you could even say it. You don't even have to take you could take the ambiguity out and just say you feel like it exacerbates the problem.
That would be fine. Yes.
So
just don't want to give the impression. I think it's okay. Right.
You say Mr. McGraw is concerned that illegal dumping is exacerbated by the confusion and expense of disposal at the WRC.
Sounds great to me. Yes. Thank you.
You got exasperated spelled right. I guess that's great.
I thought I did pretty good on that. Thank you.
As soon as Sarah said that, I said, "Oh boy."
Don't worry, Microsoft's got you covered.
Yeah, it would have told me if I had gotten it wrong.
Spelling bee champion.
Also,
You are?
believe you, since you're on spelling, you've got Brian's first name spelled wrong.
Is that so?
Oh,
Under
it
ICI
tells me that.
self-haul recommendations.
Oh, yeah.
Dang.
You can all blame that on my grandfather.
Had to make a decision one way or the other.
Yep. It's a family name.
Okay, Jerry McGraw, are you happy with the sentence as it reads now?
I am happy with that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good. Okay, do we, maybe the same two people want to make their recommendations now?
Yes, please, and I appreciate that Mr. McGraw brought up his concern because he's right.
Yeah. So Bruce, you want a second?
I second.
Okay, so we've had a motion and a second, and we have reviewed it again. So all in favor now?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the minutes are passed, approved. Okay, now if we could pull up the agenda.
Okay, everybody see that?
Yeah.
This is basically the agenda written in a PowerPoint, but so we have the approval here and then
Pretty fancy.
Yeah. So the first item, I guess, is do we want to report on their peer cities? First off, has anyone, I have looked at my peer city. Has anyone not had a chance to do that yet? So we all have looked at them and are ready to report out. Okay.
I think there's only 4 of us who had assignments, right?
4 or 5, yeah.
Yeah.
Karen, I don't have the names and places in front of me. If you want to just go, I'll let you go ahead and call the names and see.
yeah, if I can, golly, I have too many screens. Here we go. And I will say, Tim was at our last meeting and agreed to help with this, but technically he's not on this subcommittee, so I don't know if he actually kept on that with Julie. Julie could let us know.
Oh yeah, we did this.
Okay.
Well, yeah. He and I have been working on it, so.
Okay, well, this is in no particular order. It's just the list here, so you all can decide how you want to go about any sharing.
Julie, you want to go head first?
Yeah, sure. And we actually typed up a document kind of outlining the different things we found, so I can go ahead and share that.
Okay.
Here,
If I'm
you should have the
okay,
ability.
if I have permission, and then I can figure it out. Yes. Is this? Does
Wow,
this,
okay.
can you
got a
guys
lot.
see that?
Hmm?
Okay.
You do have one little gray box, kind of like I had yesterday.
Oh, yep, that's,
Yeah.
yes, it's exactly the problem you had yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay, so I kind of just went through the questions that were listed in this, and I don't know if this is, if you guys want it bigger or, so this was Karen's summary up at the top, so you all are familiar with that. But it basically, I went through all the questions, and so, you know, with this kind of standard, it can either apply to the haulers or be applied to the local businesses. And Austin chose to regulate the local businesses. So the main kind of limitation there is that there's a standard level of service and it's consistent throughout the whole city, but it actually kind of limits the diversion data that they can get. And so,
Limit what?
so this is, yeah, does anyone, do you have any questions? It's a universal recycling ordinance, they call it. And so this was gradually phased into multifamily dwellings, office buildings, and then it also phased in retail, restaurants, and industrial regulators. So that's the next question was what property types does this affect? And that's who they chose to target, mostly commercial property owners within the city. So so they chose to make it require recycling containers within 15 or 25 feet of trash containers. And with every aspect of this ordinance that they enacted, each had like this really great little visual. And I put this one in as an example, but every single thing was completely illustrated, really laid out for the residents and the commercial property owners to really see and understand, for the property owners to print out and communicate with with their tenants, etc. So that's a kind of theme throughout all that information, which was why it was so easy to find all this information. And it just requires that all the commercial property owners educate their tenants and employees about it once they have entered, if they begin to work at the premises within a month. So that is like the requirement for information. And then the phase-in actually took about over 5 to 6 years. But they recently kind of entered that last phase of the phase-in. And then they had a lot of information about their whole process, their whole stakeholder process on the website too. I would encourage you guys to click on it if you're curious, and I can put the link in the chat. But so it really started with a big zero waste goal. And this kind of was able to unite these stakeholders around, well, we have to get to this goal. How can we all get there together? And that really helped everyone to, of course, there's going to be a lot of collaboration, compromise, a lot of give and take. And so uniting around that big zero waste goal, which was specifically zero waste or 90% reduction in waste to landfills by 2040. And so uniting around that goal and having that directive from the city to reach that goal really helped them bring all the stakeholders together. And I listed all the stakeholder groups. They separated them by industry. So each of them would kind of have this similar waste streams and then talk about their individual challenges with those waste streams. And then it was just like rounds and rounds of meetings and with individuals, with groups, and toured facilities, and then finally they reached what became their universal recycling ordinance about 2 years later, and then agreed to again that 5 to 6 year phase-in period. So the ordinance was enacted in 2012, and so again it took a long time to phase that in. And then but they also have business. They were really they have like business champions. They also have neighborhood champions for their zero waste goals. But relating to this, they have business rebate programs and a lot of ways to assist their businesses and ways to find champions to start promoting this to their other businesses and their associations. And yeah, again, it was like a really great website, and it's very interactive, very, as you can see, it's like buttons with icons and very easy to navigate. And it just says, this is, okay, you're a commercial building owner. This is what you need to do within 30 days. This is the bins that you need to put out. This is what you need to communicate to your employees or tenants. And also the EPA did a case study on these, which is how also I got some of this information. So yeah, they thought the gradual phase-in was, it did, of course, like phase-in kind of complicates communications a lot of times because different things to apply to different groups, and so you kind of don't have a universal thing you can tell everyone. But it also, of course, has a lot of advantages, and there's a lot less pushback oftentimes. But so this was what the EPA laid out for the advantages and disadvantages of their zero waste program. And that is the end of what I have found. Okay, I don't know, stop sharing.
Very impressive.
a lot of things were copied and pasted. But yeah, they have props to them for putting all of their information online and really having a really transparent program and stakeholder process. Does anyone have any questions?
What did you think was the of the things that they are doing that we aren't? What did you think would be the easiest next step for us?
Good question. I think that I think it kind of, if we're going to embark on this, whole process, that could be a lot. But I think the small things are they had a lot of materials that were that they wanted to make available to the businesses to distribute to their employees and kind of just distribute it that way. And I think that was all really useful. And it was like a print this by all your, and put these stickers on your recycle bins, put these stickers on your trash bins, etc. And so I think that is a way to, working through the business owners to communicate to the public. And then also just kind of having a really big, ambitious goal and communicating that and kind of uniting people around that seemed to be really effective in bringing people together toward a solution.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yes, no other questions. That was a great presentation. It looks like they have a very good, well thought out program. I liked one of their comments said, make regulations, explain them. I forget how it was worded, but don't make regulations for regulation's sake, but make sure that you have the goal, the goal is set so people know why you're doing it and what you're doing. That was a good comment. All right,
Yeah.
next. Go ahead, Karen. Karen, I don't know who's next.
I think it's me because it's
Okay.
Boulder.
Yeah. Boulder and Sarah Lynn. Yeah.
Okay.
Do I have the ability to share? Do I have permission?
You should.
Let's
I
see.
think you should have it at the bottom. There you go.
Now I need to scroll here. So I admit my report isn't nearly as pretty as Julie's, but it might be a little more focused. I skimmed a lot of material. I think all these cities have put together a whole lot of written material, as have we. And these are the highlights that caught my attention the most. And the first one is that unlike us, they have compulsory collection, but like us, they have multiple competing haulers, both private and public sector haulers. This was kind of surprising here, all property owners, and they got into it from the residential, single family, multifamily, commercial, institutional, etc. It said all businesses must separate recyclable and compostable waste from trash and submit a report every year to the city. I looked at the report and it was non-quantitative, it was qualitative in the sense that you had to affirm that you were availing yourself or your property of the 3 services, trash, recycling, and composting, and with whom. And you needed to, in the case of, say, a commercial building, you were supposed to show photographs, attach photographs to your report showing your recycling container stations and the signage and that sort of thing. Which was kind of interesting that they took that qualitative approach, but anyway, that's what they did. I'll get into the exemption stuff at the end. Then it said that, the one thing that I wanted to emphasize here is I could not find anything to speak of about self-haul collection facilities like we're looking at. So I did put in a call, admittedly this afternoon, to the point person in Colorado to try to find out if they don't have such facilities, and assuming that they do, when this statement says all businesses must separate, does it apply to them? I'm guessing it does, because if you tell the generators they have to separate, it surely seems that the people who receive what they separate would not commingle it. But just to be sure, I've got a phone call into her. Special events have to provide both recycling and collection. It did not say they had to provide trash collection. I'm not quite sure how to interpret that. It may be that I was looking at a highlight selection, or, just a bullet point thing, and they didn't feel a need to say that you have to provide trash collection. They went into some detail about their philosophy, and the gist of it is they have bent over backwards, in my opinion, to accommodate the private sector wherever the private sector is willing to provide services. And if the private sector isn't willing and the city believes a service is necessary in order to reach their net zero waste goals, the city's allowed to use the waste fees that they impose on waste generators, not unlike our fees. They're allowed to spend that money to create a facility. They're allowed to use that money to do financial analyses to determine whether that facility's operations might be handed over to the for-profit or not for-profit sector at some point after it's been proved to be a viable concept economically. So that was a little bit gray, but I thought a helpful insight as to how they go from public to private sector. They had this, number 6 was a sentence that I took the salient parts that were relevant to what we were doing, where, I've read in other contexts that if you want to have successful municipal government, the more your programs can be spread out geographically to simplify and make them more uniform, the more effective they are. And regional agreement is the term I've seen be used on everything, including zoning, for example. So they use this term to foster regional agreements in order to get standardized signage and cost sharing in order to make things more economically and practically viable. Number 7, there is this entity, and it was unclear to me who created it, but it appeared to me to be fairly public sector, probably, if I remember correctly, funded by those waste taxes, but they offer free one-on-one waste management advice. And I think the key thing there is the one-on-one. A lot of businesses don't want other competitors to hear what they're doing or not doing. And so that one-on-one is probably akin to what the Kentucky Pollution Prevention Center does. Hold on, let me get this thing unplugged. I left it in hopes that the Boulder woman would call, but I'm going to unplug that. Anyway, I think that's key. And then the other thing, again, note is that they have stock signage for commercial facilities, multifamily, and for events, but they offer to produce custom signage should the stock signage not meet the needs of that particular client. This plan for zero waste and this zero waste ordinance was adopted in late 2015. It's about 5.5 years old. And back then they planned to, and my understanding is did, create a partnership to convert compostable waste into what they called a peat moss alternative and into methane gas, which tells me it would be anaerobic digestion, which was proposed here about that time by the worst possible proposer, it seemed, because this guy just could not communicate effectively and all he did was piss people off. But the idea, I think, is still viable. It's already being done here in Louisville. People just don't even know it. But I thought that was interesting that they were taking this tact. And then the last thing is they had a list of entities that were eligible for exemption from this zero waste ordinance. And it was the usual suspects, but you had to apply for it. You had to make a compelling case that you just couldn't comply. And even if you got an exemption, it was only good for 1 year, and then you had to apply again. But this self-haul section was where I thought it might be the most relevant to what we've been talking about. And even then, it looked to me like if you tried to look at our situation where people are cleaning out a garage or whatever, and they take everything off to a private sector disposal facility, it looked to me like you could not assume that that was going to exempt them, that they would have to sort once they got there. But again, I couldn't confirm that. And whenever I hear back from Boulder, I hope to speak with more confidence on that account. And that is the summary of my report.
Right.
Shall I unshare, I guess? Let me see.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Where did it go? I guess I have to do it.
Any questions or?
Mine's at the top, Sarah Lynn, when I unshare.
Thank you. So I should be here, oughtn't I? Hold on a second. Seems like I'm making a mistake here. It should be that I can go to this icon. Let's try. Okay, I need some adult supervision.
I think if you,
There, now I can do it. Thank you. That didn't realize where it went.
The only question I might have had was where it would be interesting to find out who and how, who funds and what the makeup is of that PACE group, I think, or whatever you called it.
Yeah, they referred, in fact, the P is for partners or partnership. I've got it in my notes here, which now I'm going to have to, it stands for one of those, and it was struck me as multi-sector.
Yeah, if you could just follow up at some point with that, it'd be great to find out.
Yeah, I've got, like I say, a call in.
Who and
I
what.
just unplugged the phone, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe I've heard of that group PACE before, Partners for Clean Environment, because I believe if it's the one I've heard of, they do like a full-scale business assistance with their community. They do that, like you were talking about, the waste audits and waste management, but also help with energy efficiency, energy assistance, and that kind of thing too. So they've come under my radar because it's a really interesting model.
Mm-hmm. And I might as well add that from my experience, Boulder has been ahead of the pack in this country for food waste and compostable recycling. And we're probably going to be in Colorado in September. And if we do and have a little bit of time, I might even ping these folks and see if I can stop and have a little bit of a look-see so that I can speak with more updated confidence.
Okay, great. Next person.
Brian and Bruce for the Orlando, and I know, Brian, if you want to share that document that you had sent.
Well, you're talking to someone that's technologically illiterate. That copy I sent to you, Karen, can you share that?
Yes, let me pull it up.
Thank goodness. Bruce, you can do that, can't you?
No, I can. I'm dumber than you are.
I doubt that. I doubt that.
I'm like, I can turn the computer on.
I'm learning. My children said I got faxing down finally. So
Yeah, Gordon Garner said 6 months after he retired, it was amazing. He had to learn how to do his own faxes and travel
Yeah, that's
arrangements,
right.
you know?
yeah, I have to admit I'm kind of in that category. So I admit it. Thank you, Karen. I appreciate you.
Okay, did it pull the right thing up?
It did.
Okay.
Bruce, do you want to comment or would you like me to?
I'd like to say that Brian did most of the work. I read the article after it took me 2 weeks to find it, but I will say Brian did most of the work. I agree with what he said, but he gets all the credit. not
Well,
me.
I don't know about that, but I appreciate it.
The one thing let me say one thing, Brian.
Yeah, sure.
The one thing I'm not sure about, I'm not saying it's not good. They proposed to build I forgot what they called it exactly, a cage or
Double enclosures.
an enclosure around the recycling and the garbage. And I was thinking about our city. I'm not sure the people in the West End could afford to do that. And, or how simple of a way could we make it where they would be able to do something like that? It's a good idea, but is it prohibitive in cost for the lower people who live in the West End?
What is it, a screen?
It's actually, Sarah Lynn, just like a dumpster enclosure, a complete enclosure, and it'll be in our report, but they expanded it's kind of interesting. It seems to me, I had 2 extensive phone conversations with the sustainability manager of Orlando and a gentleman named Dr. Joe England, who tracks all their stuff, who's on their staff. And it seemed to me that they concentrated more on the commercial multifamily than they did on residential. And you'll kind of hear that in our report. But suffice it to say that when I get there, the commercial part was what they call double enclosures, one for trash and one for recycling on the commercial multifamily end.
Okay.
So the city of Orlando was one of our target cities. They did pass an ordinance. That ordinance was not specifically identified, Karen, in the copies that we had. It's actually in Orlando known as Chapter 28. And Chapter 28 is the ordinance for the city of Orlando. So what they did was they set aside, like we did, like in our Goal 19, they set aside an objective of being zero waste by 2040. I don't think they identified as clearly as some other cities exactly how they were going to achieve that, but that is their overarching goal.
And I should insert that was Austin's as well.
Was it?
Same percentage, same deadline.
Okay. So they divided their discussions up. I had a number of questions, but they did most of the talking. So I'm going to start with the commercial and multifamily recycling program. And again, this is identified in what they call Chapter 28, which was their code in Orlando. It was a phase-in schedule, which I happen to like. I think that's a good thing to do. And so the phase-in schedule was voted on by the city council underneath Chapter 28. That was in 2016-17. So they began their process in 18-19. And what that did was the city of Orlando is, interestingly enough, the exclusive collector of solid waste in the city. Recycling is an open market. So, in the context of this discussion, Orlando City, all solid waste collected by the city, recycling collected by 12 vendors. So 12 additional vendors that were certified to collect recyclables. And that was established by the code. So the recycling market is an open market and the trash market is a franchise market that the city handles, kind of like the residential in the city of Louisville. That's the way I would interpret that in Orlando. The pricing and the recycling container size was determined by each provider in consultation with the individual commercial or multi-family representative.
Did you say pricing and container?
Yes, the pricing is established by each provider.
Thank you.
So there is not that's on the commercial industrial side. The residential side is fixed. So I'll get to that in a minute. So the phase 1 was effective October 1st, 2019. And what they did, they identified their phasing by the size of the multifamily units and the square footage of the commercial establishments. So their initial phase 1, effective October 1st, 2019, was all new properties. So if you were developing a new property or you had a substantial construction change to your property, then the code became effective October 1, 2019. Phase 2 was effective April 1, 2020. And the building type that was identified in that particular segment is called large. So these are by definition larger facilities. The multi-family threshold included any property with more than 250 units or 200,000 square feet.
Ignorant question.
No ignorant
we-
questions.
I know I'm being facetious, but do we have very many situations in Jefferson County with 250 or more multifamily units?
Yes,
Okay.
I would say we do.
Okay.
And we have more and more. You know, there have been a lot of new construction activity that's had 300, 400, 500 units, which are large. You see them as you drive around town. They seem like they're everywhere. There are some that are under 200, but I think there must be a price point that all these developers have come to. If you don't have X number of units, then you're restricted on your opportunity for cash flow, I think.
I imagine for new construction, you're
For new
overwhelmingly
construction.
correct. Yeah. Good point.
This also included retrofitted properties. So in April 1st, 2020, if you did a substantial retrofit to your property, you fell under the Chapter 28 code at that time. Phase 3 was effective April 1, 2021. So it was just effective a month or two ago. And this building type was required to include what they call medium size. The medium-sized multifamily threshold was 75 to 249 units with a property size between 100,000 and 199,000 square feet. This category also included retrofitting. So if you were in that category and you came in and you did a complete remodel, then you had to go ahead and comply with the ordinance. Phase 4 will be effective in April 1st, 2023, and that is substantially everything else. So in 2023, they would hope to be substantially completed with their transition to commercial multifamily requirements. So the three main parts of the ordinance that I read would be fairly simple. You got to provide a recycling container. You got to choose a provider to provide that container, and you have to submit what they call a recycling verification, which is in the code and it's on their website. So you can do everything electronically. You can go to the website, you can call up the report, you can enter the information in the report and submit it. If you do not submit it, then you're subject to fines and other things. So they've got a pretty good expectation that these things will be accomplished. The city sends all their materials to a processing center, which they do not own, but the county owns it. So it's owned by the municipal county, which is Orange County in and around Orlando. So their contract with the county is a fee of $88 per ton, less the rebates or the returns on whatever the price of the commodities are at that time. So Dr. England was never very clear with me about what that net cost was, because obviously it varies, and they're having a little hard time communicating, I think, with their county representatives about how does that work and what kind of studies are they doing to determine how to price their product that they're delivering. Now, and that has been really substantially it. I will say they have a very robust educational department. I was very impressed. The sustainability manager reminded me of Karen, very knowledgeable, you know, spoke freely about what they do to go out and try to assist people with this recycling effort. He did say that the double enclosures has met with some resistance by property owners, depending on the space they have available and the pricing for that. If you have 20 dumpsters, it's a pretty big project to expand that to double enclosures. So I got that. I mean, that's, you know, Sarah Lynn, to your point, to get back to the private sector, right? And hey, that's expensive for us. We can't get the return on our investment, but they're doing it. It's just.
So to clarify, pretend that I had a large apartment complex and I needed, I'm making this up, 3 recycling dumpsters and 3 trash.
Yeah.
Do I have to have one enclosure for the 3 recycling and another for the 3 trash? Or if they're spread out, then I have to have 6? How does this work?
You know, that's interesting we're talking about that. They really didn't answer that question directly for me. They said it's mixed, but the way I read the code, it's really designed to have one trash and one recycling in the same double enclosure. So if they have some methodologies on their website where you can make estimates about what size container and how much you need, which I found that attractive. But the real answer to that, Sarah Lynn, I think it's designed to be one trash and one recycling. So if you had 20 trash locations, you would have 20 double enclosures, and you would put a trash and a recycling dumpster in the same.
Even when they're contiguous?
You can, if they're contiguous, you could increase the level of services, right?
Mhm.
You still have to have a trash and recycling, but you
Sure.
could go from 3 times a week to 4 times a week, or 4 times to 5 times, or add a recycling dumpster and put it in as 3 times a week. There's not a calculation, an arithmetic calculation for how to do that, but they do have an estimate in their website that says if you're going to do this, then we're recommending you add this size recycling container.
Thank you.
Remember, recycling is an open market and trash is not. So the city of Orlando provides the trash container and services it, and then 12 additional vendors assist with the educational department, Karen, which would make sense, works very closely with the private sector to help them with estimates on sizes and things like that. So it sounded to me like they had a good, close relationship on trying to make sure that was accomplished.
But it looks like from this paragraph right here that they have what I would call combined utility billing, where you have one bill for multiple
From the city,
services.
yes. Yes, from the city, yes.
And look at how low it is.
The pricing,
Yeah, isn't that low?
not on the samples that are on their website.
Okay.
Their pricing would be about double the pricing that I would see in the Louisville market. But
It's a little
Orlando, every city's different. I don't know their landfill rates, and the 2 representatives did not either. I was trying to make some calculation about how that fit because they pick up all the trash. So they have to have a solid waste bill that comes to the department every month. But they weren't as knowledgeable about that. And they did say they'd check into that for me, but I haven't heard back from them. We've talked 2 hours by teleconference 2 different times. So hopefully I'll hear back from them on that.
It's just a little confusing. It says trash and recycling is $19.25 per month, for which is billed on utility bills.
Well, now
says-
you're going to recycling, so I'm getting there. This I found really odd.
Right.
The city provides the solid waste, recycling, and yard waste collection for the residential sector. The billing is $19.25 a month. That includes anything you get, but the only requirement is for solid waste and trash.
Yeah.
The resident is not required to have a recycling container. I found that very interesting. They did not know the percentage of residents that had both trash and recycling.
Why are we even looking at these people?
Well, they were. I just told you, I found that interesting.
Yeah.
Because you think if anything, it would have been reversed, that it would have been on the commercial side if they had that description, not the residential side. And they had absolutely no idea how many people had both trash and recycling. They assumed most people had yard waste, as they said, during the season. And I said, is that something you can go to your billing records and get? And they said, no, because the billing's the same. We just know that if operations gets a request to deliver a recycling container, they take it out, but we don't include that. What I'm trying to say, the people around here are a lot more organized than City of Orlando would be. We have a lot more firsthand knowledge of what's going on than they would. So I did find that unusual and irregular. Yard waste and bulk items were collected once weekly, and that's also in the code. Yard waste must be in bags, and they did identify that those are biodegradable bags. So they've done what we've done, which is require customers to put that in bags that would biodegrade, and our bundles and 2 large items collected weekly, which is a very generous program, frankly. I found that to be, one of their probably interesting offerings. This is good. The city offers free backyard composters to residents. They will deliver it. They will help them set it up, that educational group, Karen. It stays with the home. That is not the property of the resident. So if they leave, the resident that come in takes ownership of the composter. If they choose not to compost, then the city goes out and they retrieve the composter. So they do not collect food waste. I found that interesting since they're using the composter. And they did say that there are a number of bills going through state right now that would impact recycling. But they didn't have, I was going to go Google it. They didn't have a good understanding for what those were and what those meant. They did say that their governmental affairs people would know that and that they would try to check with them and maybe forward something to me so I knew what those were. So honestly, I wasn't overly impressed with their program. You know, for the size of the city and, you know, most people know Orlando and they know Orange County, it was not overly impressive to me. Any questions?
Brian, this is Bruce.
Yes, Bruce.
I pulled up City of Orlando online, and it appears that their commercial services is roughly 2 to 2.5 times the rate that we pay locally for the same type of service,
Yeah, that would be correct.
and which helps with their recycling initiative at $3.60 a yard for recycling collection. So I think that gives them a bit of an advantage on pushing more material to the recycling bin rather than the solid waste bin.
Yeah, and if you go to that website that the study provided us, there are some good examples about if then. If you do this, then this would be your cost and this is the savings. The savings in Orlando, Bruce, would not be the same as it would be in the Louisville market. Their prices are substantially higher, and so, you know, saving $123, you don't get within 40% of the rates that, you know, we would typically see, you know, in this market. So, you know, not to go farther with that, I just found that interesting, but I do not know the disposal situation there. So disposal could be, you know, $65 a ton there. And that's why you see that on the pricing side.
Yeah, I was curious whether they incinerate or whether it's landfill disposal.
Landfill. They did say
Okay.
landfill.
Clarifying question Bruce, were you finished?
Yes.
Thank you. I just looked up the population of Orlando as opposed to Orange County, and it says 281,000 in 2019, which is probably pretty close to our urban services district, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so.
Um,
There are not as many residents, Sarah Lynn. They claim to have between 60 and 67,000 residents
huh.
in our residences in Orlando.
Uh-huh. Well, anyway, the
We
point
would say ours
being
is
is
probably closer to 80 to 90.
yeah. But, you know, point being, I would have to agree, we seem to have a better handle on what we're doing.
Definitely.
We can't, they can't be excused by the size of their city.
I was most impressed with their education department because they did have a very clear understanding of how to go out and assist people. And that was very impressive to me. They would be, you know, several Karens. They had a pretty good sized department there. Do you have just you and one other now, Karen?
Technically, yeah, me and Diane. Jessica Turner helps with enforcement.
And she helps. I know that of the people I spoke to there, they have a manager, which would be similar to your position, Karen. And then there were at least 3 other people that were rotating in on my conference calls that were education focused. So they must have a pretty good sized staff in their educational department. And I was impressed with that. They knew what to say and what to do to assist commercial customers, particularly with their decisions. So I found that to be a positive. Anything else? Thank you for sharing our document, Karen. I owe you a drink.
Greg, I guess you're last.
Yeah, and I want to be cognizant of time. We only got about 6 minutes left. But I didn't have that long of a presentation anyway. I'm impressed with what you guys did. So I put in the chat a brief summary to keep it short. So if everybody wants to look in there, I'll just talk. The biggest thing was education is required, including for tenants. In other words, everybody has to get educated. And I'll get to that in a second. And they also say managed competition decreases the operational recycling cost by 12 million annually and paved the way for the city-wide recycling expansion. So I thought that was very interesting. I can get more details on that if anybody wants to, or you can go see it yourself. I just, went through the stuff that was sent to us, and those are I thought those were the two highlights of what the whole thing I read. The other thing is, if I have a chance, but I could share that recyclebycity.com really quickly with her. Do I hit share and then I have it up in a browser. Do I hear share content or share web browser?
Usually you get to choose what thing you want to share.
There's like a thumb.
I'll try the browser. I have it in the browser, but I don't know what's going to come up.
As long as you don't have any dirty pictures up, you're safe.
Right. Yeah. Okay, yeah, here it is. And I guess I can control it then.
It's all black on my end. There we go.
Okay. But now I'm not sure how to make it move. Huh.
You see your browser, but it's not that website right now.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well. Well, all right.
My question is, what does managed competition mean in their context?
That I took it as, I'm going to stop sharing, it's not working. I took it that they have a way, we've talked about that, I thought here, is that they have all the companies can compete, but it's through the city. So I just thought people would know a little bit more about that themselves here, but I can find out more how they do it. But they just, when I just took like a highlight of when they were talking about it, and it sounded like they thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. But that
would be my interpretation, but it would
Yeah.
seem useful to know some more about it.
Right. But I guess and that's harder for me to understand because I'm not in the business, but from me, the recycling guide, I recommend everybody look at it, especially Karen maybe, but the recyclebycity.com, they show example of everything. In other words, there's a kitty litter box and they're just little windows like we have here. So if you want to say, what do I recycle or what can't I recycle? There's a list of 100 things. They show like a summary, but then they have a thing at the bottom that says, what would you like to see? In other words, when you have a question about that, tube that something came in from the store, you type it in, they look at it and they decide whether to put it up or not, and they'll have it there. So to me, it's almost self-education. Everybody could just go up and see. So it would save a lot of the questions that Karen gets now about, can I do this? Can I do that? It's like they put it on and it's an ongoing thing. And they have what can be recycled and what can't be recycled and what you can compost, all that stuff. So I just thought their education was really good.
Well, is it any different than the recycle coach that we're using?
Oh yeah, I mean I thought so, right? Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
As far as, are you finished, Greg? Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say if anybody wants me to, I could look into more of what they mean by managed competition. But
I think so. If they're saying they're saving 12 million.
Yeah. Okay. I'll try and do that for next time.
It'd be interesting to see their calculation, even if it's in approximate terms.
Right. Okay. But it's 4:13, and if we want to try and keep to an hour, I think we need to look at what's else on the agenda and have time for anybody to have some last time there was some very interesting questions and comments from people, and I see we have some people on that may want to ask a question or talk. So
yeah, just to show the agenda here, we did have, if we needed to look at all of the ICI and self-help recommendations again, I have some things pulled up. I don't know if you have, what we would want to say about them. And then the stakeholder self-help questionnaire was sent to our, I think 4 places, but we have not received all the responses, or at least personally I hadn't, to help with this. So we can table that to discuss the responses for next meeting for sure.
Okay.
And
Did you get any feedback? The questionnaire I thought was very good.
I only saw one come through from Marie. And then I didn't take a real long look at it. And I'm not sure if Diane got any others to her.
Did we-
Since she's gone, I didn't see them.
Did we check with them to make sure they received it?
Yeah, before Diane left for her vacation last Thursday, we resent and double checked with everybody. So so if she got something back, it might have just gone to her or something. But anyway, this is the I just have the list of recommendations out again. Like you said, Greg, we're about out of time, so I don't really know what kind of discussion you'd want to have. But these are all the ICI recommendations, and then there's 4 self-haul recommendations.
I'm not sure what we could do at this point in time.
Yeah.
So what did the 109 board say in a nutshell?
About the recommendations or about the...
No, about these recommendations?
I don't think that the 109 board has said anything more.
Okay, then I'm just misunderstood.
Yeah. Yeah, the one ICI, we had kind of tried to write up that proposal for the standards and signage and adequate infrastructure. That's the one we worked on before COVID, and I don't know that we've revisited that exact document in these meetings, but and then these are all the titles on the impact effort matrix. So I think it's just kind of something on the agenda as always to look at all of these to know, if we want to continue on. But since we just had a report out on these peer cities, I don't know that there's any more to say.
Right. So what's our next step? Wait to hear back from the 109. Are we waiting to hear back from the 109 board on the recommendations,
or should we just take all these answers we have and put them together in one big page or a couple pages? Say this is what we found.
If I may add, the direction we were given by the 109 board was to bring forth recommendations to the board that are fully vetted. We feel will increase the diversion and recycling rate within the county. And so by taking things to the 109 board, we would need to have basically a fully drafted recommendation vetted by stakeholders as to whether or not it's feasible and what impact it'll have on the community. And before we present it to the board for their review and consideration. And I commend everybody for their work today. I found it very interesting, looking at peer cities. And I think we can learn a lot from them, and maybe more investigations required. But I don't think there's been anything, Karen, have we sent to the board for their review and consideration?
I don't think so.
Actually, if I could have just a second, I think that a lot of what you talked about today could also be shared with the subcommittee that I chair. You talked an awful lot about multifamily and residential housing. And I like Bruce's idea of putting it together in some kind of a comprehensive report. And then once that's done, I'd love to have you share it with our subcommittee.
What if we asked each group to do 1-page summary of what they thought was the most relevant to Louisville and then put them together? Or even less than a page, but
yeah,
that seems like a good start.
right. Yeah, because we want it to be a summary. All the stuff has been out there. Everybody could look at every city and all this stuff. I thought so. We were like summarizing what we thought was best. So half page to a page each, right?
Can we get copies of all 4 reports?
Sure. We should probably send them to Karen and let her distribute them so we're sure that we're getting them to everybody, but yeah.
Yeah, I can do that.
So the full reports that were talked about now, or are the groups going to do a different summary?
Maybe both.
Oh, okay.
I mean, mine's already well under 1 page, but for the folks that ended up writing more, if they could convert the most important points into bullet points to get it on 1 page, it might be helpful.
Yeah. And I wonder if also maybe, like, not to detail too much about specifics of those cities, what's specific for them, but keep it more to what we could learn and use and do for ourselves here, right?
Mhm.
That's why I didn't copy a lot of the
Smart.
Chicago stuff. A lot of the Chicago stuff was based just on a huge city. and
Well, I
we
mean,
want-
Chicago's like us in the sense that it's got a huge city and tons of small cities.
Yeah.
But it's still a hell of a population center compared to us.
Yeah. Okay. So
But,
everybody's going to
my
send.
attitude is we can all, every community we look into's probably got a good idea we might want to use. And
Right.
that's the whole point of why we've looked into these cities. And therefore, it seems to me that our distillation should be focused on what we think's most relevant to Louisville.
Right. So we're all going to send our summaries to Karen. Can I ask? I'd like to have a deadline on stuff. Is it about a week's time? Okay, so it gives her time to put it together and turn it around. And it'd be nice to have all this ready for our next meeting, and or even I don't know when the other subcommittee meets the week before us. I think I don't know if it'd be possible to get it done in 3 weeks. So I'd like to ask everybody to get it to Karen 1 week from today, but at least quicker if you can, whatever.
So if we have a compiled summary, is that okay to have shared for the other subcommittee?
I
suppose.
believe, yeah. I don't think we need to vote on it. I think is anybody not okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right.
My
This group's
perspective,
never been
Karen,
big on confidentiality.
No, you guys did a very good job, and I think you should be proud of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and I think this is the type of information that we need to share when we have our next full advisory committee meeting and open it up for discussion.
Good.
Mhm.
Truly puts a little meat on the bone so that we have things to consider, pros and cons,
Yeah.
with regard to each individual initiative.
It makes me wonder if we should do another round and pick out 4 more communities that we think might have some relevance to us. But I'm wondering if, maybe a national association could say, oh, I think you need to look at so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. Maybe Pete's already done it. I don't know. But if we feel like it's a productive exercise, it might be worth replicating.
Well, but I'd like to keep with what we got for now in order to get
Oh, no,
stuff done
agreed.
on a time frame,
Agreed.
and then do it again, perhaps, yes, but keep it separate, not drag this out, right?
Especially if there's a spot that we feel like we still don't have good ideas. Maybe zero in on it.
So are there any other input or questions or comments that anyone that's on still now? I see a couple new names and different people. Does anyone want to have any public input? Okay, hearing none, I guess. Unless
I
somebody,
move we have a potty break.
well, actually, I thought we're ready. I think the meeting's about ready to be adjourned.
That's what I mean.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought you wanted to come back.
No, I was just being a smart aleck.
All right, so there's a motion to adjourn by Sarah Lynn. Anyone second? Anyone second?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion is seconded. All approve?
Yay.
Yeah. All right. Any opposed? Okay. I really want to also, like Sandra said, thank everyone for what they've done. It was a lot of good things we looked at and talked to. So appreciate the efforts.
See you in a minute.
Oh,
Yep.
the advisory committee meeting is canceled, if that's what.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Sorry if you missed that, Sarah Lynn, but yeah, we'll reconvene with advisory committee the next month, so July.
Supper's gonna be earlier, right on.
Yeah. Have a good evening then.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
You all.
Bye-bye.